Welcome to the AutoGuide Show. This week, we have a lot for you. There are some new Jeeps on the way, Hyundai has a bunch of news, and Kyle drives a bunch of cars. But first, a word from our sponsor.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
All right, so welcome back to the show. If you're watching the video, I guess we should start by asking Mike why his background looks a little different from normal.
Yeah, this isn't a virtual background. I am actually at the Nürburgring in Germany for the Nürburgring 24-hour race. If you want to see, there's the famous chicane just outside, so it's proof I'm there if you're watching. If you're not, just take my word for it. Yeah, so I'm here for the race. It is going to start in about less than 24 hours. Right now, you may hear some cars in the background. It is the top 30 qualifiers are trying to do their super shootout for pole, mostly GT3 cars. But anyway, let's get into what we have this week.
Yes.
Talk lots about this next week. All right, so to start it off, Kyle drove a Prius Prime XSE. Is that the top trim?
This is the top trim of Prius Prime, yes. And how Toyota is doing it for the Prius now is if you want any of the sportier trims, you have to go Prime. So it's pitching this, you know, as the range topper, not just because it's more money, because it's the Prime, you pay for the larger battery, but it is the sportier one to drive. It's got a lot of power. I mean, 220 horsepower in a Prius is kind of nuts. It doesn't actually feel much quicker than a regular one in day-to-day driving because it is heavier because of that battery. But we've talked about this a while before, where the Prius Prime in particular is most of the car anyone needs most of the time, and in fact is a really good argument, not against EVs, but you know, if you're afraid to get an EV, this is a really great stepping stone because it drives like a regular car. It's actually kind of fun if you are into that sort of thing, but it also has good all-electric range. Like I did something close to 70 miles, so without charging.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it also looks good, and it's very practical with the lift back.
Yeah. So I think as much as we talk about how it's a very logic-defined purchase of like, well, yeah, it does just about everything. I think the thing to really focus on, and that Toyota is trying to focus on with this new gen, is this is a flagship hybrid. If you want a practical hybrid, Toyota will sell you umpteen different trims from any of their models now. But if you want something that is like genuinely fun and covetable, yeah, Prius. It's great.
It's funny you mentioned Halo because the Prius has always been good and Toyota's always put backing behind it. But this one seems like they put more into it with the hybrid and the Prime and the all-wheel drive option and the way it looks and drives. And I wonder if that's sort of in line with how other sedan sales are slowing down. Like, I wonder if they know maybe one day Camry Corolla won't be their bread and butter. It'll be the Prius.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, right? Like, it's... I mean, if they're going to keep something as stylish as this as their main car offering, sure, sign me up.
Yeah. All right, so moving on, you drove something very similar, right?
Yeah, totally. It's basically the same thing. It's the 2024 Porsche 718 Boxster GTS 4.0. Oh, there goes one of the cars qualifying.
yeah, they're racing by right now.
So this also sounds fantastic. Maybe not as good as a GT3 car, but the enticing thing about the 718, at least this particular model, is we don't have a whole lot of time left with it. So Europe has already discontinued or will discontinue all 718 models as of July 1st, except for the RS, Spider, and GT4 RS, because those are limited production, so they are exempt from this new regulation. So, and we also know that the next generation 718 is going to be all electric. So this is the end of an era. And in my mind, having driven numerous 718s, numerous 911s over the year, being very fortunate that way, this is the driver's choice, especially because now a 911 is so expensive. And we'll get to that a little bit later on this call. Yeah, I think this is an ideal all-round sports car from Porsche. It's surprisingly practical. You can fit a bunch of rollies in the nose and one in the trunk, but that's not the point. It's that it sounds great. It's plenty quick. It's 394 horsepower. I had the PDK, and as much as I would love the manual because more interaction and it's a really good manual, I would never begrudge anyone if they bought a PDK because it's one of the best of its kind and it acts a lot like a manual. You have to feed it some revs when you're at a stoplight. It's such a good car, and even if the interior feels a little dated now, it's just that it's not loaded down with screens and touch controls. So really that's a win as far as I'm concerned.
So the way things have gone lately, I'm not fully believing that the next generation will only be EV. I have a feeling maybe down the road, an engine will return. Dodge was all about the Charger Daytona being only EV, and then suddenly it's, oh, there's a gas one coming. Porsche, as you said, we'll talk about later, has a new hybrid system. I don't know. Maybe there'll be a hybrid special edition or something down the road.
I understand what you're saying, and I have more thoughts on that for later in the call and the show as well. So,
All right.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. With the parts you need at the prices you want, and with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, they're guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
As you may have noticed during the wheel and the tire videos, that the Genesis also sits a little different than it used to. That's because while getting the tires and wheels installed, we also did the suspension. Now, I did a lot of research trying to figure out exactly what I wanted on the car. I ended up with the Teen Street Basis Z suspension. So it comes as a full kit with coilovers, sprigs, and all the other parts you need for the car. The reason I went with this kit is, although this can adjust the ride height, it doesn't overly dramatically change the feel of the car in terms of road comfort. I'm not going to be tracking this car consistently or even taking it on a lot of autocrosses. Whoops. The point of the car is just to have a new look and slightly increased performance, but still be able to drive it day in and day out. And that's what the suspension aims to do. So we'll see how it is by taking it for a drive, and maybe we will do a little track test to get an overall feeling how the suspension performs on my Genesis Coupe. Last week, I mentioned that when I was at Clarkson Fine Cars, I got more than just my exhaust done. And if it isn't obvious enough, the other thing I got installed were my Teen Springs. I have them at all four corners. They are full coilover and shocks. And as you can see from here, I really like the way it cleans up the overall look of the car. Let's take a little closer look at them, look at the wheel gaps and how they fit, and then we'll take it out on the road to see how they feel when we drive. Remember, these are more of a street bias coilover because I want to keep my everyday drivability of this car with a little bit of a lower stance and a little more performance. So how does it feel? Well, pretty much the same, but a little better. And that's sort of what I was going for. I wasn't looking for a dramatic change in handling or grip. All I was really concerned about was not sacrificing too much ride comfort. And I think there I've succeeded. The springs seem to absorb the bumps actually a little better than my old system did, which was probably just worn out. Much like when I put the tires on, I think the car actually drives a little better now, mainly because my other parts are probably so worn out. And as we dug into these springs, we found a lot of parts that need to be replaced in the moderate to near future to really get the most out of them. But as it stands right now, when I'm on a straight stretch of road, my car is even less prone to pulling side to side. It absorbs bumps with more control. Maybe there's a slight bit harsher sort of impact, but it's so minimal for all the benefits, I don't really notice. And on a handling aspect, I think the tires made the bigger difference, but I would say that these ones are helping the car keep a little more flat. This coilover is really more for looks without sacrificing performance or handling, and I think there it really succeeds. I'm really happy. I think it really ties the whole package together, and there will be a future update down the road where I take this car with everything installed and hit a track and see how it all comes together. And maybe there I'll be even more impressed with these Teen Springs. But for now, just for city driving and for looks, A+ in both regards. So moving on, you actually traveled this week too. You were in New York City.
Yes. Yeah, I spent 28 or 30 hours in New York, which is a nice little in and out job, to look at the first all-electric Jeep for North America, the Wagoneer S. So this is the first two-row Wagoneer that we're getting. It is 600 horsepower. And of course, Jeep introduced this in the most Jeep of ways by showing us a very heavily edited version of this taking on a Tesla Model Y performance at the track. To talk
Those
about
are
how
track cars for sure.
Yeah, but to talk about they acknowledge that they are going up against the biggest EV company, and so they have to bring their best. And then the Wagoneer veers off the track and meets up with the previous Grand Cherokee Trackhawk, yes, Trackhawk, to show that this very slightly beats that on acceleration, because this will do 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds, which is kind of bonkers. It definitely has the least ground clearance of any Jeep. There were a lot of most ever qualifiers for the Wagoneer S reveal. It's, well, not quite the heaviest, but nearly there. But it is the most aerodynamic Jeep. I know, surprising, because you just think aerodynamic whenever you think of Jeep.
Yeah, that's not a high bar to clear.
But this picture doesn't show the huge wing on the back. It's surprising. It's like Escort RS Cosworth kind of wing.
I will outwing this later in this call or later in this show.
I am positive you will.
So how big is this compared to the Wagoneer or Grand Wagoneer?
So that was the interesting thing, right? Is like, where does this slot in? It is an inch shorter than a current Grand Cherokee. It's basically the same size as a Grand Cherokee. Very similar inside as well. Rather surprising thing that I noticed is that curb weight is close to the Grand Cherokee 4xe. So if you get a loaded 4xe, it's only about 150 pounds less than this. So Stellantis has put in work making sure that a battery model isn't outrageously heavy. Cough, Hummer, cough. And it's also not that expensive. It's going to be $72,000. This is the loaded launch edition, so it will be the most expensive model. But that is also right in the middle of 4xe range. So I'm curious. I'm optimistic. I know that the 4xEs sell really well for Jeep, and so their buyers are willing to adopt electrification. Now we have to see if they will adopt full EV. But to your point earlier, this platform is very adaptable, and Jeep's CEO talked numerous times about how they are willing to adapt the ratios as needed. If they want an ICE or a regular hybrid, they can do that. Not for this. This is going to be pure electric, but for future models on the platform.
That's a very Stellantis thing right now. And I mean, it's smart. You're hedging your bets. You can go EV, plug-in, hybrid, just gas. Like, yeah, leaves it open.
Yeah.
All right. And speaking of hybrids, something happened to the 911 this week, and people are not going to be happy.
Yes, people are angry. There's a hybrid, which sounds pretty cool. It's an electric turbocharged engine. It's very complicated, and I won't get into it. But it is a hybrid unlike any other, and it basically gives the 911 a lot more power, instant access power, and this new GTS is now as quick as an outgoing turbo. It's a little bit heavier, but honestly not much. It's 50 kilos, so about 100 pounds. It sounds pretty good. It looks interesting because it has these vertical slats in the lower air intakes in the front, which will probably get a few comments. But I think the thing that more people are concerned with, at least at launch, is that the 2025 Porsche 911 lineup will have 0 manual transmissions.
Yeah, that's something. But is there any GT3s in the 25 lineup? Because I think when the special editions roll out, the manual will probably come back.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Yeah, because right now for this facelifted model, there would just be the basic Carrera and the GTS. The S is not with us right now, and then the outgoing models that stick around for another year are the GT3 RS and the Turbo and Turbo S. So those were all PDK anyway. But yeah, I'm sure they will keep a manual around. It's Porsche, so they'll probably stick it in a special edition first, because why not? But yeah, I can't imagine them killing a manual fully after that whole debacle with the GT3 about a decade ago.
Yeah, PDK withstanding, as you said, the system sounds pretty good in this. I mean, by way oversimplifying it, it's not too far off how prototype cars have worked at Le Mans and Daytona for a while, where the hybrid system isn't really designed necessarily to drive the car just on electric. I mean, it can do that, or to save fuel, but it's designed that every time you do some serious braking, it regens power, and then you get like a boost out of the next corner. So it's giving you this little boost like around the track through every corner. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to try it out.
All right. So we got one last feature news, and then we will be getting a update from a Genesis. So the last one is another big reveal this week is the Cadillac Optic, and our freelancer contributor Lee Bailey went and saw it. So this will slot below the Lyric, and it is more, I guess, the Lyric's kind of mid-size. I guess it's like smaller mid-size. I wouldn't quite call it compact.
I mean, I guess it's compact if you consider something like a RAV4 compact.
Yeah.
Like from that perspective, yeah, it is smaller. But yeah, the Lyric has always kind of seemed slightly bigger than the segment. So this is probably more in line with what people are looking for.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously it's on the same platform as the Equinox EV and the Blazer EV, but the way the cars are designed now, it can differentiate itself so much more. It's not like back in the day where you had the same shell and you had to, maybe change the headlights and bumpers and interior. This can really look different from the ground up, and it does.
And Cadillac has found a good new design language that's pretty adaptable. This is going to start at a much more affordable price point, which I know is a constant criticism of EVs. As far as I know, this might be one of the... Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, it'll be interesting to see if Cadillac can gain some traction with their customers on this against the German EVs of similar size right now.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not a whole lot in the premium segment that's going to be in this price point. You're looking, I guess, the Volvo EX30, which is even smaller, and yeah, there's not a whole lot else on our side of the Atlantic. So yeah, curious.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break and get an update on Project Genesis Coupe. This week, it is coilover springs, which ended up being great, but it took a little while to get there.
All right. Your video is slow on my end. I don't know if it's recording.
Yeah, I know it is, but
okay. But the audio is fine, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's just I'm on Hyundai's bandwidth, which like 1,000 people are on. So
yeah,
the fact it hasn't cut out yet, I'm quite happy with.
Woo.
All right. Okay, so we're back and now into the news of the week. So the first thing we have is one of the reasons I'm here in Germany. I am a guest of Hyundai, and they announced that they are taking their Ioniq 5N and modifying it to attack Pikes Peak. So they're calling it the NTA, TA standing for time attack. And it's not that far off of a stock Ioniq 5N. They've done a little bit of work with the software, so it's got like 37 more horsepower and a little bit more torque. But I mean, it already has so much, and there's only so much traction you can get down, especially going up the hill. They made the battery able to recharge much faster, so they can get it juiced up between runs. I think they say it can go all the way to 350, which is impressive.
So it actually can do 350 instead of just up to. It's doing that now. Wow.
Yeah, so that's what they say. And then just like, some suspension, they've upgraded the calipers, 6-piston front, 4 and rear, because you need that for the braking. So yeah, their goal is to beat the current electric SUV open class with this. And then they're also taking 2 stock ends to beat the electric SUV stock class. I mean, there's 1,000 classes at Pikes Peak, but
yeah.
What's more important and impressive, I think, is they said how the N came out and then this, and they kind of hinted that there's a Q3 thing coming and a Q4. So I don't know where you go from here or what they're looking to do, but yeah,
Man.
I mean, they've told us a couple times that this thing can do 2 laps of the Nürburgring before it needs to be charged, which, like 2 laps, but that's a pretty decent distance flat out. So who knows?
Yeah. I mean, as we saw, well, yeah, as I saw recently, driving it at Road America, yeah, if you're going full attack, it does drain the battery pretty quickly for 1 lap. But okay, yeah, I never thought I'd say this if they're planning more things or they're teasing more things for each quarter, but Hyundai, can you slow down so we can just enjoy this version before you get to the next one?
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, what if the next one's, I don't even know what it could possibly be. So Pikes Peak's in about a month, June 23rd, I believe. So
Yes.
I will be keeping an eye on that. I always like keeping track of what's going on. So it should be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't the only news. So if you are watching the video, you might have noticed the picture. But all of the bigwigs of Polyphony and Gran Turismo were here as well. And it's because there is a new partnership deal between Hyundai and Gran Turismo. And they even had, the creator Kaz here to help introduce the car and everything. And both are being very coy as to what's happening. But the official wording from Hyundai was they're partnering up they're partnering up around the Ioniq 5 NTA and Pikes Peak for future development. I mean, they're being very wordy and whatnot, but basically that car is going into Gran Turismo. I think we can almost guarantee. I also think they're going to probably put in maybe the regular end, maybe it's like the Elantra end, maybe the Ioniq 6. Like, I think Hyundai is ready to spruce up their car lineup. I mean, right now they have the N 2025 prototype and the Genesis Coupe, and that's it. And they have the N 2025 here, and they talked about releasing that in 2017, and that was the start of the N brand. So this is sort of now. But back to the Pikes Peak thing, the fact they called that out specifically in the press release, if people don't know, Polyphony and Gran Turismo have owned the exclusive rights to that for, I think, 7 years now, and they've done nothing with it.
Yep.
So maybe it's finally coming. Maybe they're finally going to put it in the game and launch it with this, which would be awesome. Something, I mean, people have wanted forever in that game. So
yeah,
here's hope.
Not to go too far off into the video game thing, because both of us really enjoy playing racing games, but yeah, it's been a disappointment because exclusive licenses are always bad for gamers, and not being able to play Pikes Peak in any game, including rally games, has been kind of disappointing the last few years. But if it is coming, great. If Ioniq 5N and various other models are coming to Gran Turismo, excellent. The N74 just arrived in Forza Horizon 5 last week, so it seems like Hyundai is having a concerted effort to target gaming, which is great because that's how a lot of people get into cars these days.
Yeah, at a minimum, I am certain the Ioniq 5N, probably TA, is going to be in the game, and probably the 74. All their sort of flashy concept Halo cars. But yeah, the fact they called out Pikes Peak, I mean, they're not calling it a Pikes Peak edition. They actually call it the TA spec. So why would you mention that if it's not going to be included in the game somehow? I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm reading too far into it and just hoping too much, but I would love it to start running all my cars up there.
Sweet.
All right, so back to Jeep. There was other Jeep news while you were in New York.
Yes. So this was a surprise to us because when we got there, brands typically give us information ahead of time so we know what we're getting into, but there was no mention of this until it was literally revealed at the event. And so luckily we still had a couple hours before to cover it. But yeah, it's a Trailhawk concept, which makes a ton of sense. It's the off-roady version of their new EV because Trailhawk has been on pretty much every unibody Jeep for years now, and it just makes a lot of sense. So it has some different styling cues. It has chunkier tires, which add 2 inches of ground clearance. Then it has a 1-inch suspension lift for more. So you're now looking at about 9.5 inches. Some cool styling touches, including cutouts for the roof rails and the tow hooks. So they're lighter, but still just as strong. A ton of green. This is banner green as the exterior color. So a nice little nod there. And then inside is mantis green, and it's a faux leather, which is easier to clean. Yeah, and it's still the same thing underneath. It's made to do what Jeeps do. It's a concept, but it looks very production ready, and I would be shocked if they don't introduce that a year or two after launch.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky because immediately people will compare it to the Hummer EV, and price point is going to be so different that the capability probably be quite different. But
yeah, this is more. I mean, provided it actually arrives, this is more like a Rivian R2 competitor in my mind. Yeah, build it, Jeep.
Yeah, do it. Okay, so another well-known nameplate got some, I guess, like mid-cycle refreshes this week. So the BMW 3 Series, including all the way to the M3, got refreshed and updated. I mean, the M3 is a little more powerful. The 3 Series kind of improved where it needed to be, but they didn't change the formula too much, which is probably good.
Yeah, there's not much else to say about it. The current 3 Series is fantastic. This is its second facelift, which is a little surprising. But yeah, it's
one of those, don't mess, if it's still selling, it's still one of the segment leaders, which it is, then yeah, why try to reinvent it? Wait till there's a reason to, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it for news. Normally we would have a guest when we come back, but because of the crazy schedules Kyle and I are running this week, we can't. So we will have Colin on to talk F1 news and rumors, and then Kyle and I will be back after that. So you're listening to the AutoGuide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Okay, everyone, let's take a minute and talk about the one that got away. The vehicle you once owned and for whatever reason had to get rid of, and to this day fully regret ever doing so. For me, it's my Subaru SVX. It was a 1997 model, which was one of the last years it was ever sold here. It was black on the outside and it had the beige leather and suede interior. It was in amazing condition for its age because it was just a one-owner vehicle. The interior was near flawless. The paint was pretty good considering it was about a 20-year-old car when I got it. I just loved everything about it. I loved the quirkiness because I love oddball cars. I love the window within the window, the power button on the gear shifter, the way the dash was laid out and you could hide the radio behind the fake wood panel. The flat six was just so smooth and it was all-wheel drive, and although it wasn't overly quick, it still had enough power. The problem was, within a year of buying that car, I ended up selling it because I got a great deal on another vehicle. And to this day, I regret doing so. Part of the reason I sold it was, although it was in great shape, it wasn't perfect and there were things that needed to be fixed, like the air conditioner, reservoir, some bearings, and other bits. And back then there was no eBay guaranteed fit program, so finding parts for such a rare 20-year-old car was not easy. Luckily, I sold it to someone who not only cared for it, but took the time to fix it up, and every once in a while I do get to still see it, and I still regret ever getting rid of it. I am constantly online looking for a new SVX because now I have a system that I can find parts for it, but I haven't come across one that's both in the right condition and the right price range. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
All right, welcome back. Even though I am in Germany, we are still going to do our Formula One news and rumors update, and we have Colin Wood back on the show.
Hello. I guess if we're, it's all racing, I'm very jealous of you being there at the Nürburgring. That's super cool. So let me maybe
sitting here, I've thought a couple times like, man, I wish F1 still raced here. It's such a cool Grand Prix circuit, but maybe they'll come back.
Yeah, it seems like, it ebbs and flows, right? So there's a good chance it will once again return. That, obviously they'd never drive on the Nordschleife, but the rest of it. So I had to touch on like the Monaco race first of all. It was by all accounts. I said on the call last week that qualifying is interesting and the race is a dud for those who don't know. And the race was, I think, beyond a dud. I think it was at one point I remember watching the announcers were actually like getting visibly excited that Bottas was passing Sargent for like 16th, and it was like one of 3 passes in the whole race. So, it was not the most exciting.
I saw a graph somewhere, and I think it was somewhere like 12th or 13th up. Everybody finished in the spot they started.
Yeah,
it was only at the bottom where there's a couple moves.
Yeah, it was, and it was the first race ever in Formula One history where the top 10 were the same at the start as the finish. So, and despite all that, they had this wild, crazy crash, right? So at the start, and you think that would have shaken things up and made it really interesting, but other than those few minutes and those couple replays, it was a real dud fest, I think. So
it's bad when 5 turns on the first lap are more exciting than the next 77 laps or whatever it was.
I know, it's not good. There was a funny quote. Verstappen actually came on the radio at one point and said that he said he should have brought his pillow. And this is while he's driving. So,
but in fairness, Monaco's always boring. Like, it's such this historic track, but it sucks for racing. I mean, it just simply does. And what can you do to change it? You can't. It's in the city. Like, I know they've one DRSO, but it's useless.
I think they talked about what I keep seeing is people suggesting that they remove the chicane coming down, like out of the tunnel, right? You come down there, but then, I mean, it's weird. Like, that sucks, but at the same time, that chicane is normally one of the only passing zones. So I don't know. They need to do something. I think the funny thing is, apparently, I saw the stat somewhere else recently that it is still the most watched Formula One race. So despite the fact that as far as racing goes, it's not great. As a spectacle, it's wonderful. All that sort of hurts me from like a motorsports enthusiast is that means there's a lot of people. The only time they ever tune in to watch an F1 race is the worst race of the whole year, right? So in their opinion, like I always say, this is similar to like, I always said like Ferrari should make it illegal to rent Ferraris in Las Vegas because there are always these like beat to hell cars, whatever. And so you've got people who go to Vegas, they spend $2,000 to rent a Ferrari for the day, and it's a piece of trash. And then they think that's what a Ferrari is. And it's just like, it's the same thing here. These people think that's what Formula One is, and it really isn't.
So the 2 positives that I take out of the race is it's cool that Charles won like his home track.
Yes.
And it was very interesting that Max could not make progress. So it shows if you take away the Red Bull's straight line speed, that's always a bit superior, that Ferrari and McLaren have caught them in terms of all the other dynamics. So it could be an interesting rest of the season.
I think it's going to get real close. I think they do. Some of the reading I have done, they do say that like Red Bull kind of knew these were the tough races. So the next race is the Canadian GP back in, not our hometown, but our home country. That it should be more back to Red Bull dominance, but I think that will be the real test, right? If Red Bull is not dominant in Montreal, then the season is going to be wide open. I think they'll start to claw in.
There's a lot of open straights on that track, so it'll be interesting.
It will. It's always it's a good race. I always do, and the Montreal race always seems to bring about unique weather, and there's always seems to be some rain or something. It's funny because again, it is almost more of a street circuit than it is a traditional. It's not a Spa or some of these other iconic Silverstone like real proper racetracks. It's not one of those, and yet it seems to deliver racing like you get at those. So I'm hopeful. So
yeah, me too.
The other so two more bits of rumors in all the chaos of the lap 1 incident there in Monaco. There was Ocon basically broke his car and ended up almost destroying Gasly's race as well because they collided and everyone decided this was definitely Ocon's fault. So there were these wild sort of speculations going around after the team principal basically said that they will take this very seriously and that there will be consequences. And so somehow this rumor got out that Ocon will be potentially benched for the Canadian GP. And I'm like, to me, that seemed highly unlikely. Like, you pay this guy big bucks, he's your driver, you're going to bring somebody in out of the blue to do one race. That seems really strange. It's just more hurting the team than yourself. And I but we were about to get on here. I was checking on Twitter, and Ocon has this really long Twitter thread. And I thought it was good. The way it started, I thought it was going to be something about how I'm leaving the team or something. And in the end, he basically just says how he's excited to be with the team in Montreal next week. So I think by all accounts, it looks like it'll go on, and who knows what that internal discussion is there and what sort of penalty he has to pay. So
Yeah, I mean, how terrible the season's been. Like in that race, they were in decent shape, and then one guy takes out the whole team in one move, and yeah, it's not good.
It's not good. But Alpine's savior is apparently on the horizon. So this is the wildest rumor that I think I've seen lately, is that Flavio Briatore, former Renault, which is now Alpine boss, is apparently tipped to join the team again. So much so, and here's a tip for all you kids listening: if you're writing your high school assignments or whatever, and you use Wikipedia as a source, you shouldn't. If you go to Wikipedia right now, it tells you that Flavio is back with the team. Not could be or maybe, and because it is. And if you click through, the rumor is from some blog that no one's ever heard of, and so it's really not substantiated. But it's the Wikipedia page says that Flavio Briatore is in fact back at Alpine. So he for those who don't know, like he actually brought Schumacher to Benetton. He was the guy that basically brought was he escaping my name now? The Renault guy now, Mr. Alonso. Sorry. So he brought Alonso to Renault, won 2 championships right away, and he actually left sort of in a lot of controversy. So his Wikipedia page is actually fascinating. If you go and read it, he's apparently was alleged to be in all kinds of crimes when he was a young man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's wild. I read his Wikipedia page and I'm like, someone absolutely needs to make a movie about Flavio Briatore. I would watch the hell out of that. So
How long's it been out for?
Years and years, like at least a decade,
Yeah.
I think. So because it was the whole Crashgate scandal, and I want to say early 2000s, when basically it is alleged, I don't know if it was ever proven or not, but that basically he asked one of the drivers, Nelson Piquet Jr., to basically crash on purpose in Singapore so that Alonso could stay ahead in the race and win. So and they determined that was not appreciated. And so he got a very hefty slap on the wrist. So, and he was involved in all kinds of other shenanigans. So by all accounts, seems like there's some shady stuff, but he would be very interesting and has always been tied to success as well. So as they say in racing, if you're not cheating, you're losing. So I think it'll be fascinating to see him.
I've had trouble keeping team principals around for the last little bit, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I feel like the current guy too is very interim, so it could happen. I'm anything is possible.
Yeah. Well, the race won't happen until you're already back on next week, so hopefully there'll be some news stories. Maybe we'll know a little bit more leading into the Canadian Grand Prix. But thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks. Have a great time in Germany.
Yeah, I will. Next day, it's a 24-hour straight stint, so I'm looking forward to it.
Good stuff.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Take care.
All right, so we are back just for a bit. So a look ahead at what's next. Well, first off, we talked about the Cadillac Lyric earlier, and we are actually going to be doing a comparison with it and the
Genesis electrified GV70, because they are two very similarly sized and priced premium two-row EVs. And I'm very curious to see how this plays out, because the electrified GV70 is fantastic. And the limited time that I've been in a Lyric, I've really enjoyed it. So it'll be really good to get them together on home turf and see what they're all about.
Yeah, and it's like you said, they're very similar in a lot of ways, but it's kind of interesting because their core are very different. We have something built on a dedicated EV platform that can expand like a million sizes compared to a vehicle that was designed as a gas vehicle that they've successfully converted to EV, and that's rarely the case. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. From what I've heard, they're both pretty good. So yeah, it'll be interesting. And I am still here in Germany, but I get back Monday night. But obviously, I can recap the race, and it may have some other tidbits. I got to drive something that should be in North America, but isn't. So I can talk about that. And I got to tour Hyundai Motorsports head office, like the N division, and that was really cool. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff happening here. Kyle, you're not even going to be here for a lot of next week, are you?
No, it's true. We're talking about a comparison, and we will be doing it, but I will be driving. Actually, I'll probably be driving the GP70 for a little bit. I am heading up the Automobile Journalists Association of Canada's annual Eco Run again this year. And this year we are going to Quebec. We're going there the same week as the F1 race is going to be heading to the province. So that'll be fun. But we are collecting journalists from across the country and driving some of the newest green vehicles, so hybrids or plug-ins or full EVs. And there are a few surprises in store for journalists who are coming. We spent a lot of time working on it. There will be some new activities and formats, and it should be a lot of fun. And it's still a competition for journalists to show how they can drive cleanly. But the great thing there is giving back to readers and owners of cars across the globe on how to save some money at the pumps or save money charging your car. Anyway, it's about that, and so I'm really excited. We're going to be driving a bunch of new vehicles.
It's really nice of you to offset Formula One's carbon footprint by doing this same week.
Yeah, we're driving a bunch of the cars from Ontario to the event. We're not even shipping them. The journalists are delivering them. So yeah, we're going the extra mile.
You really are. Well, that sounds interesting, and I look forward to hearing sort of how things went comparing all these vehicles back to back. Because in isolation, you always think, oh, this one's so efficient, this drives fine. But then maybe when you get them all together, you realize one isn't as good as you thought and one's better. So, So we'll find out next week. We will be back. We will have a special guest on next week because we'll be back to a more of a regular schedule. But until then, this has been the AutoGuide Show brought to you by eBay Motors. Thank you for joining us.
So long.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.